Thanks for tuning in to Women Who Open Doors, a podcast dedicated to lifting the voices of incredible women in our communities who not only excel in their careers, but inspire us through their actions for others. Hi, I'm Julie Collins, owner and coach of Not Magic, and it's my honor to help share the stories of these remarkable women. So without further ado, welcome to Women Who Open Doors. Well, welcome to Women Who Open Doors. I'm really excited today to have a really special guest with me. So let me introduce you to her. Nicole Sullivan is who is joining us today. Nicole is the president of Youth Frontiers, overseeing the day-to-day execution of organizational goals and building the foundation to launch Youth Frontiers' newer programming, including retreats for adults and Gen Z. And we'll talk more about that during our podcast. Nicole brings over 15 years of experience in executive coaching, organizational effectiveness, and operational management to this position. She is a passionate advocate for change and community development, active in her community where she has served in numerous board leadership roles with the Center for Coaching and Organizations, Junior League, Mile High United Way Emerging Leaders Council, and Special Olympics Young Professional Board, just to name a few. So I'm super excited to have Nicole. So Nicole, welcome to Women Who Open Doors.
Thank you, Julie. It's just such an honor to be here. So thank you so much.
I'm really excited to have you share more about Youth Frontiers. I think Nicole, maybe 6 or 7 months ago, you and I were introduced together, and I was able to learn about Youth Frontiers. And right away, I knew, obviously, just because the mission of our podcast, that you and the organization we have perfect fit to talk about. So for those listeners, as I was 6-7 months ago, not familiar with Youth Frontiers, can you first just share a little bit to give context, just a little bit about the organization?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I'd love to talk about it. Youth Frontiers was started in 1987 by our founder, Joe Kavanaugh. And since then, we've worked with over 2 million individuals, inspiring character and community. We work with individuals of all ages, but primarily students within schools, class levels of a whole size, 4th and 5th graders, 7th and 8th graders. And we take a deep dive in through a retreat facilitated by wonderful facilitators, where we focus on small group activities, content, music, interactive experiences, all centered around age-appropriate character traits. So I mentioned those 4th and 5th graders. They're learning about kindness, the simple things about how are you kind to one another? How do you connect with one another? What's the difference between an unkind behavior and a kind behavior? As we work up those courage, 7th and 8th graders, middle school, think about the tough times that are in middle school, and we equip them with a common language and tools that they can use in their school environment to help be courageous, stand up to do something right, to walk away. And then finally, with our high schoolers, respect. How do you respect yourself first and foremost? And how do you respect one another? We say on that retreat, you don't have to be friends, but you don't have to be enemies either. And so really focusing with youth on these age-appropriate character traits. And then over the pandemic and in the last couple of years, we've really spent a lot of time coming up with programming that's targeted towards educators and adults. You know, our founder, Joe, heard from a woman for many years, an educator, and she said, why aren't you doing this for adults? Why aren't you doing this for adults? We need it too, right? We need to remind ourselves on how to connect with one another with character. And out came our educator programs. We also have the great honor of working with educators. Think about those really great humans that are in schools every single day, leading, shaping, really informing these wonderful students, the future, our society, right? So they get to spend time with them. And so how are we equipping them with the tools that they need to understand their purpose, the need for their profession, how to honor one another and be in school community as educators together? And then more recently, we've really started digging into our work with leaders. And this is really exciting because we have noticed over the years repeatedly, we hear it from our supporters, we hear it from those we work with, hey, our leaders need this too. We need it in our workplaces, and we need to learn again. And I'm going to say again, because so
Mhm.
much of what we talk about is these are really easy foundational things. They're not complex. They're not new, right? They're just reminders, and then equipping with common language and tools that we all can share to uphold them together. And so, yeah, our work with our leaders. And so our Geometry of a Leader program, which focuses, it's an alternative, not an alternative, but it's a leadership development program that focuses more on yourself, who you are as
Yeah.
you lead. It's not necessarily going to teach you, it's not like Crucial Conversations or one of those other traditional leadership development programs. It's one of those where you get to sit back and retreat yourself. Think about it as an adult. How often are you honestly taking a break as a professional and saying, hey, I need to focus on how I'm showing up for my team, for those I lead, and the impact I'm hoping to drive
Mhm.
in my role. And so it's a beautiful one-day retreat. And we also do community experiences, because I talked a lot about character in our mission, but so much of what we do is about building character in communities. And so aligning people that are on all different walks of life, all different backgrounds, all different beliefs, and creating conversation and curiosity and understanding and learning about one another. And so we do an annual leadership luncheon where we bring in key leaders that speak and share some of their wisdom. And then we also have conversations, even at our events, where we're like, hey, let's talk about what we're seeing in our community and how character
Mhm.
might be a solution. We do a young women's conference where we bring together young women across schools all across the Midwest, along with women mentors. So in the community, and we do a multi-generational event, one-day event. So really kind of finding these different opportunities for youth and adults to connect all around how to drive a more positive character-based experience in our communities.
Yeah. Well, this is why I love doing the podcast, because even I just learned a ton more than what I learned when I sat with you for a period of time. So I love that. So let's go back to youth first, and maybe even, talk to us a little bit more. Obviously, times have changed. We're in some, obviously some different periods, pandemic, all those things that you talked about. But talk to us really why this is so important from your perspective, especially for the youth of today.
It's so interesting because I'm going to answer, you said my perspective. So I'm going to answer
Yeah.
my perspective first and foremost as a community member myself.
Mhm. Yeah.
One of the most important thing I will say in my life is I'm a proud mother and wife.
Mm.
And I have two young daughters, Harper and Hazel. They're almost 9 years old.
Shout out to Harper and Hazel on the
Yeah,
podcast.
oh, thank you Zoe, for doing that, because so much of what I do is so I can leave
Yeah.
my community and my world a better place for them, for their peers,
Mhm.
for the next generation. And I talk about that a lot. Leave something better than what you found it.
Mhm.
And so much of what Youth Frontiers and the honor of being able to lead this organization is because I see that we have an issue and we have a problem, and our youth need our help. And as a coach too, I believe that we all have the individual power, capability in ourselves to activate action. And so I see youth that are struggling. 60% of youth right now are reporting severe loneliness. I'm going to share a couple more statistics because it's
Yeah,
kind of
great.
staggering.
Thank you.
8% of Americans at a whole don't have any close friends, no one to go to. 58% would say they have no confidence that they can have conversations with others that have a different viewpoint than them. So
Mhm.
where youth are struggling, there's great division. There's a lot of stuff going on in our world right now. There is a lot of
Mhm.
stuff going on in our world. You turn on devices, you turn on a phone, and it's constant, right? And
Mhm.
most likely it's curving towards a negative slant, right?
Mhm. Right.
It's a lot of sadness, it's a lot of hurt, it's a lot of anger, it's a lot of judgment. And I think it is so important. I say this often to those I work with, like, we need to be the hope. We need to be the possibility that if we equip some of these great kids with tools and resources that they can use to understand in the moment, not just repeat like a kind saying or read a poster on a wall,
Mm-hmm.
the tools that they need, and give them an opportunity to connect with one another, see eye to eye. It may be just that one day that year. Some of these classes are really big, but to be
Yeah.
able to connect with one another, they're going to think a little bit differently when they go to interact. And so when we think about our experiences, especially targeted with youth, it's really kind of trying to get them into a room and break down a barrier. Kids are behind screens incessantly now. They
Mm-hmm.
actually communicate. So if I'm sitting here with you, Julie, we would be sitting next to each other and we'd be texting
Mm-hmm.
at the same time.
Right. Right.
And how do we get them to put the phone down or actually come out of their room and
Mm-hmm.
connect, seek
Mm-hmm.
other people at out on the playground or out at lunch? How do we get them to connect? And we also realize that the pandemic stalled some of those things. And so how do we equip them with the tools that we have known for over 35 years are strong and can change the way schools talk, can change those school climates by the students themselves? I really want to stress that that's the students taking these tools
Right.
and activating within their own school communities. I without a doubt, it's a hard time for youth right now. It's a sombering time, but I without a doubt believe that with tools, resources, and support, that the kids can make a difference. They can do this change. They are the hope. They are our next generation, and we believe that they are the leaders of our next generation.
Mm-hmm.
So doing our part. And that's why our adult program really is so important as well, because
Yeah.
over the years, we've realized it's not just them, right?
Right.
It's all
Right.
of the different influences that they
Mm-hmm.
have in their life. How are parents showing up at home, and do they have the tools and resources they need to raise strong children that are able to deal with a lot of the kind of craziness that's
Right.
going on right now? And
Mm-hmm.
educators, again, we know that they are a huge influence on
Mm-hmm.
students. So how can we equip them so they show up every day their best self and being who they want to be as they teach? And so I think that we can align and we can all
Right.
community agree that we don't have to agree, but for the sake of what we are trying to advance, we can find a way to come together.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love that you use the word community, because I do think that's a key piece. Too often we're like, well, let the teachers deal with it. So even that you have a teacher program, my best friend is a teacher, and all the time I'm like, you are the change, right? Like you are the change. But we have, as a collective community, we do have a responsibility, not just for our own house, but for
Yes.
for the houses around us as well. And it does start with, how we treat one another. So I love that you're really, helping educators as well, because I think so often they're on islands
Yeah.
themselves.
Absolutely. And they have a hard job. They have a hard
Yeah.
job. They've gone through a lot over
Right.
the last couple of years. They
Mhm.
are tired. They are the ones still that are there every day,
Mhm.
showing up for our kids. And so, how are we supporting them as a community in the great work that they are doing? I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Let's touch on leaders a little bit. You kind of led right into one of, I've had lots of conversations and in our work really with these leaders that are also about, those younger generation. They don't get it. And I kind of feel like it's the same story that happens every generation. I don't think it's new, because I now say, God, I sound like my mom or my dad, right? But tell us a little bit, for those leaders, just even not just about character building, but how you're also helping that perception of youth and what they can bring, just as you're talking about the hope. How do you help that mindset change in effectiveness too?
I think one of the most powerful things that I always say for an adult or a leader is to come on retreat and come and witness the magic as it goes, because that's when you actually get to see them show up in their best state. And then you can kind of see the potential and see what's possible.
Mhm.
And I think another really big thing too is, I mentioned earlier that multi-generational retreat where we actually took different perspectives and people that might have more experience and have much more just broader view or whatever it may be, and bring together and time and time again, Julie, those women that leave say, I learned more from the students than
Mm-hmm.
any of the wisdom that I
Mm-hmm.
imparted on them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think being able to continually put youth in opportunities where they are able to kind of raise their hand.
So, talk to me a little bit about your leadership journey as well, and maybe some of the highs and some of the lows that got you to where you are. Because obviously, you're super passionate about Youth Frontiers, but part of this podcast is really about sharing with other women and other men, like what it takes to, you're running a nonprofit, so you tell us a little bit more about that journey for you.
Yeah, I actually reflected on this a little bit recently. If you would have asked me, Julie, nearly 20 years ago, do you think you'd ever run a nonprofit, or do you think you'd ever? I'd be like, no, what are you talking about? It wasn't ever on my purview. I grew up in just a different environment where I didn't have corporate working parents at home, and I didn't necessarily see modeled. I was aware of it, right, but I didn't see modeled the path that I took, and so a lot of my path was seeing opportunity and saying yes, or quite frankly being like, oh, like, how do I get in there? Like, hi,
Yeah.
how do I do that?
Yeah.
And so I started my career off in Washington, D.C. And it really changes who you are as a human because it teaches you quite a few things. So very, very early in my career, no job is too small. If you're not willing to do it, don't ask somebody else to do it. Always ask a question if you're given the chance. And like I said, I'm going to be the first one. Can I sit in on that? Can I be in a meeting and invite people? This is my other thing. Invite people when you have an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And so through that, I got to see a lot of really cool things. And I got to learn a lot. And I went and I worked in a nonprofit for my first time. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. You get to actually, I started in DC wanting to impact change at a higher level, right? And then I was like, wait, there's this really great body of work here. And that was the first time I ever got to work with all women. I worked for a nonprofit. It was small, but it was all women. And it was my first time really seeing a strong woman leader and I still remember her, Kate. She had a lot of power and gusto and the confidence that she exuded. I often was in awe. We didn't always agree on things. I didn't always understand her perspective, but the way she kind of handled herself and the professionalism that she embodied often was a big driver to me. And then I moved with my husband to Colorado, and I got to go, switch back into mergers and acquisitions. And I got a lot of really cool opportunities there. I was in a startup. I was working under the founder. I've worked with a lot of founders in my career, which is also a unique mindset. I got to see kind of that visionary entrepreneur repeatedly bringing things to life. And so I learned how to launch things or how to gain initiative and drive influence. And then I went into consulting, and for much of those years, those just super impactful work for me. It was just, I got to see so many wonderful humans come into their own. And I ran a leadership development cohorts, and I did employee engagement surveys, and that's how I got my start into coaching. Because just like in Youth Frontiers mission, individual action, I firmly believe that we all have potential within us, and that we all have and we sometimes just need support and tools and resources to activate within it. And I got to travel all across the nation during this time. It was also when I was becoming a young mother. So it was the constant learning about competition of time and space and what I want to be and the influence I want to drive in the world. And I worked with really wonderful humans, including a manager that had she wasn't my manager for very long, Joette. I still think of her very fondly, but she was the one that really taught me how to do some of the nitty gritty of kind of bigger leadership, like negotiating contracts. And she would let me come to meetings. And there were many times when I had no business being in some of these things, but she let me, and she would always answer my questions, and she wasn't warm and fuzzy, but she was incredibly supportive. And so I got to see a lot of different leadership styles in that moment. And you can understand this as a consultant working with a lot of different people.
Yeah.
I got to see ways that were successful about activating teams, ways that weren't successful. I got to learn a lot. I facilitated a program that had a lot of guest speakers. I went to a lot of conferences. So I really kind of say that that was like my MBA, my like my leaders, my masters, and all of that.
Yeah.
And that I was like, hey, I really do love school. And I went back to the University of St. Thomas in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. All of this is just really because I was, said yes, or not even I said yes. I saw something and I was like, I think we can do something about this. I didn't always ask for permission. I would kind of just be like, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
But I often find that if you're thoughtful, if you take in that there's some really cool opportunities, and there are opportunities for you to learn different things that are within your day-to-day scope that can really transform and give you options on where to go. And then I met Joe Kavanaugh when I was consulting at University of St. Thomas as well. Joe has spent almost the entirety of his career building the amazing foundation of YF. And really, as we look to launch this other programming, partnering with him. And so we could really get this off the ground. But so much of my journey has just really been, right place, right time, asking the right questions and not being afraid of asking.
Mm-hmm.
Afraid of being like, hey, I met you once. Are you willing to go coffee? Those who know me well, I'm a serial connector, like, right?
Yeah.
Like, how can we help one another? How can we help one another? I might not be able to solve your problem, Julie, but I might know somebody else that does.
Yeah.
And the more of that connection and that just general sincerity in one another's success, my success, like, is great, but my team's success, my peers' success, that's just as important. And I think the more that I do good, the more that other can do, and the more it's like a multiplying effect. And so I tried to work that through my career, but I also had some really great people that challenged me along the way. I will always say a plug: find an outside coach, mentor, have a couple. They will tell it, like, ask them to be an honest sounding board and provide you constructive feedback and help you. And so there's just so many learning opportunities out there on every single day. And it is really easy to get into a check the box mentality where let's just do the work and be done with it. And I also want to hold this with the truth that work is work. And like I mentioned, first and foremost, I'm a mother, I'm a community member, I'm a wife. And so you have to hold these truths but still, like, go for it. Life is meant to, I say this all the time, life is meant to be experienced. It is meant to be lived. What a beautiful gift you and I, Julie, have every day, waking up and getting to go actually make a change in this world. And what a shame it would be if we doubted ourselves and maybe held ourselves back and the change and the light that might come from that. And so I always just encourage people, say yes. Appropriately. I'm not talking, I know it's easy to get like overwhelmed or get but like cool opportunities or new projects that you're like, I have no idea how to do this.
Yeah.
Okay, try. Like, try. We miss, and then then we can talk about it. But and I think that's an important reminder for leaders. If you want people to grow and you want people to stretch, give them space, an appropriate space, but give them space. Let them fly a little bit, and they're going to likely drop, and there might be a hiccup. But the more that you can create a space for them to be able to excel, the better off your team will be, and the better off your organization or company will be.
And then I always say too that they find their own light. Like, I just, even listening to you and your background, I love the connection. Like, I'm making an assumption, which is never good, but like, you have found your light, the center of what you learned along the way to a position, a career, a mission that really fit who you are. Is that a correct assumption that I'm making for you?
That's a correct assumption. And in fact, that's actually what I hope we can do for our organization as well. We talk a lot about the best gift that we as Youth Frontiers, the best thing that we can do is find that overlap where a human's great gifts meet an organization's great gifts, meet the community's great need. I do not take it lightly, my role, and you're right, it's a lot to run an organization. but I do it proudly. And it is, like I said, right back to the thing. I didn't think I would be here, but I am. And it is such a combination of my job is successful if we've increased our impact over our year, and my team is doing well, my team is growing, that our programming is growing, and so often it's very little about me, and it's very much about the people we serve, the people we connect with, our incredible staff. We have a wonderful group of humans that works tirelessly behind the scenes to bring stuff to life, and supporting them and creating an environment for them to flourish, and creating goals that they can get excited about, and work that they can get momentum to be able to find their light. That's it for me. That's it.
Super
Like
cool.
it's
Super cool. Yeah. Awesome. Well, you talked about your daughters. So thank you very much. I have one daughter, so shout out to Daughters of the World. But tell me a little bit about what you guys do for fun, or what you do for fun, Nicole.
Oh gosh. Okay. So I spend a lot of time with my daughters, and I proudly do that. It is a hard, I just said it to someone yesterday. It's a stage of my life. It's a hard stage running a business, as well as being an active parent. But I run a youth org, and I know the critical necessity of being present and being engaged with young individuals. So I take it very seriously as well. We spend a lot of time together, and I really love it. We affectionately call ourselves the She-Wolf Pack. And
Nice.
like we have like a little thing. And what we really love to do is spend time outdoors and exploring. We live in the Midwest. It's always tricky.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But we are adventurers. I would say that it's kind of matches my career as well, but willing to go out and explore. I am a coach, and so I love spending time with other coaches and a learner. And so I get to do a lot of work with other women, actually other working mothers too, that get to come together and just talk about the journey that we're on, and how we can continually advance in our careers and show up as our best selves at the same time. And, I will say I still love to volunteer and connect with other people. But so much of my time right now is really balanced with being present with my kids, and actually going out and helping them see the world, see the communities around them, understand things that are much different. Our world in Minnesota, I'm very, very aware is one aspect. And so how can I help show them different things and different ways of thinking? That curiosity part of our mission at Youth Frontiers rings true for me very intimately, because the more we understand, we don't have to agree with it. We don't have to align with it, but the more we can understand one another and beliefs and all of that, the more that we can just show up with a little bit more empathy and space for one another. So I'm trying to model that for my children as well. I'm not a perfect parent. I'm not at all, but
none of us are. No,
I know, right?
None of us are.
But I'll be very honest. Those are my two mighty calls right now.
That's cool. I love that. Well, I just looked up at the time, and again, it always goes so fast. I should have I need an hour. For these podcasts. Well, why don't we finish up? Tell our listeners a little bit of how they can find Youth Frontiers, so that they can get in contact, either help or donate.
So first and foremost, thank you, because I love our mission, and the more I can talk about it, the better it is. So first and foremost, go to our website, youthfrontiers.org. And there's a lot of really great resources. You can follow us on social, Youth Frontiers. And where I'd love to is reach out to me, LinkedIn, email, reach out. I love hosting people on retreat. I love inviting, we have community events, adult community events. I love being your partner, saying, hey, I'll come sit through. I love our retreats just as much. And we do workshops for community leaders. We do community workshops, and we have some coming up both in Minnesota and in Wisconsin in the fall and winter. And so those are great community opportunities. And like I said, we work with schools all across the Midwest and nationally as well. And then we are just kicking off for our 2025 Youth Frontiers Leadership Luncheon, but that's coming up as well. But I always say, hey, check us out online, youthfrontiers.org. I'll say it again, in our social media, and reach out and let's go on a retreat. Let's just or grab coffee. I mentioned I'm always up for a coffee, and let's talk about what are you seeing in your community? What are you seeing with your friends or with your peers, with your kids and your kids' schools? And where might Youth Frontiers intersect with that? Because our programming spans all ages, all situations, and we really can be a partner. So if you're interested, let me know, because these communities of character are some of the inflection points that we're starting to see that are driving the change that we know. But reach out. I always welcome a coffee.
Awesome. Well, thank you for all the work that you and your team and Joe from starting the organization are doing in the community, and just so glad that you could join us today. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It was such a great honor, Julie. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we have. Are there inspirational women leaders in your life? Recommend them for this podcast by emailing me at jcollins@knot-magic.com and telling me why they're the perfect person to be featured. And please leave us a review on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts to help us share these amazing women with others.